Very stimulating speaker here today. For those of you who are not familiar with this information, just sit back and try to absorb this with an open mind. Today we got Mr. Robert Hemmitt speaking, artist, historian, architect, up-and-coming lecturer in the Atlanta community. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bobby Hemmitt.
Okay, brothers and sisters.
Okay.
You know, I always stress when we come out to these gatherings, since there's so few of us in consciousness, but people are growing each day, that it's like one family. And my whole contribution to the world and the way I view myself and the way I portray the knowledge, or I bring the knowledge to you, is on a family level. This means we can get to say things in an informal way. I'll talk to you the same as I would talk to you in my living room, or I go over to your house, because it's got to be personal. And his brother Steve, as well as brother Jesse Jones, who set the lecture up, we went out to his job and we were able to transfer my pictures on transparencies and get this thing so we could have a visual presentation. And I was talking to the brother Steve here, and I was telling him, you know, I just met you today, and already I feel that I've known you, because we understand that all black people share one common goal together. And I said, and seeing we need to come together, not even just in lectures, but black people need to just come together and kick it in the community, and we need to converse more on a family matter, and not just your immediate family, but just any brother that's black and is have a common goal of liberation for black people. We need to come together. We need to do that. I want to say that brother Jesse over here, about 2 months ago, I was lecturing. I opened up for Steve Coakley. I stepped into place, and I had met him before, and he knew I had some things to say, so he called me up and I lectured a little bit, about 20 minutes before his lecture started. And somehow Black Media Arts was able to get that lecture on cassette. And one day, about 3 weeks ago, I just happened to come in, and he said, and brother Jesse Jones said, "Hey, I know that voice somewhere," because I have a deep southern voice. So he said, "I know that voice somewhere." He said, "We got you on cassette. You know, we have you on cassette." And I took it home, and I got the cassette and all, and we set up a lecture right there. He said, "We want to do some things." I took it home. I said, "Doggone, I didn't know I sound in this country." But then the thing about it, I'm from South Carolina. And the thing about it is, I said, well, that's good, because I won't change this voice. Because the worst thing I can't stand is a Negro. When he gets around a bunch of people, he hang around you all day, and then all of a sudden he gets around a bunch of people and he starts sounding white. You know, this is the worst kind of black pathology that we can experience, you know, just transformation into the white and black. And I understand that we live in a schizophrenic society where black people have to do the white and black thing between corporate jobs and all of that. But one thing I wanted to say is, to speak with you in the manner that I would speak to you in my living room, you'll know that I'm serious about our liberation, and I love black people. You know, I love black people. And, you know, and I have a problem with a lot of black people changing up when you get around other people. We need to be this way. If I went to University of South Carolina, which is all white, I'm still going to speak to black people in that audience. If it's 2 black people and it's 100 white people. You see, my mother, I come from a family of school teachers. My mother, my grandmother, my aunts, and my uncles. My mother used to go with this guy, and he was caught up in the illusion that somehow people with a college education somehow actually in their mind was more superior than the brothers who wasn't fortunate to go to school. Brothers and sisters wasn't fortunate to go to school. And this brother could talk articulately when he was just regular talking. When he was just around his people, he sounded great. But when he got around my mother, he thought that he would have to pronunciate different things in a certain manner, and he ended up messing up. You know, he would say things like, "Well, regardless to the situation, can you reimagine this?" You see, saying, you see. So he would change these things up. And I remember friends in South Carolina. We used to. I went to a school called Benedict College in South Carolina, predominantly black private school. And my brother went to a school called South Carolina State, a black school. And I remember I had a good friend of mine. She was this girl who used to hang around me when I was at Benedict. She met my brother one time. She said, "Oh yeah, you know, I went to Benedict because I didn't necessarily like South Carolina State, because Benedict are more funner than South Carolina State, more funner and all." So she was trying to talk proper, and all of a sudden, you see, it came out the wrong way. So I think that we don't need to put on any type of front with our people. Our people are confused enough, you see. And I do have a strong emphasis on scholarship. If you're going to tell black people things, you need to try to document those things. And especially with the lecture we're going into today, it's a lot of unbelievable things. And I think that you need to try to document it as close as possible. And you could give your people, after the lecture, they can go out and get books. And you know what? It's a synthesis that's going on, because some things, I can read a book, bring some things to the table with you, and you can go back and you can have another mindset, and you can bring some scholarship that might be the key to what I needed to synthesize my whole process, you see. And that's the main thing from the next 10 years. This is what we should be doing. We should become students. There's nobody in here that's beyond studying. And what I mean is, you see people riding the bus and reading all kinds. My mother used to read thousands of Harlequin romance and all kinds of Gothic books and all. And I was just saying one time, this knowledge wasn't available in the early 70s when we were growing up. And I remember her reading all these books. This knowledge wasn't available. And I was saying, this is a woman that loved to read. And just think, if she could have got the scholarship that we have today and would read all of that, she would be manifest into the goddess that we all came from. And I want to go into the first lecture. Before I say this, I must say that this climate that we have, I want you not to be paranoid, because this climate that we have is good. All the things that you see that black people are going through, they're slipping down the tube, and you're going, oh man, black people are just in the worst shape possible. It's good when you think about it, because you can't have a change from something that is not good. You see, you can't change from good to good. It's got to, when you see black people slipping down the tubes, you got to understand things have to get totally worse before there can be a change. And even that, it can knock black people into reality also. You understand? We see brothers out, and you see it every day. For some of you people that are just coming into consciousness, you got to have patience when you're coming into consciousness, because some of your own people are going to be the worst people that you're going to try to bring into consciousness. And this is the first thing that happened to me about 5 years ago. And what happened to me, I just want to say a bit of things, and I'm going to go into the lecture. I was an art major in college, and I also designed shoes and art, and so I got my college education in art. But I had a love for fashion and all of this thing at the time, you know, this insanity. I'll go into that later, but I designed shoes, and because I am a god, and all the black people are god and goddesses, we could do anything we put our mind to. It's just that we got our mind in the wrong places. But anyway, I later on met up with a shoe agency in New York by the name of Roger Bowman Agency, and in 1988 I had come from Columbia and had gone to Clark for 2 years up here, before it was Clark Atlanta University. And I remember coming in '86, and I saw black people. The climate of Atlanta was doing good. If you didn't have a job, it's because you didn't want one. Everything, you know, black people, you know, the black bourgeoisie, BMW, and all of this. And then overnight, between '86 to '88, I saw a crack epidemic just automatically just burst out on the scene until right before I was going to New York to design shoes for this guy. I saw black men standing on the corners with the buckets and the squeegees trying to get money for crack money. And you have to be dead. Some people have a deep love for the people. I've always had that deep love. And you have to be dead not to notice this and this not have an effect on you. And one night, I remember this good, I was coming back from a club, and I saw about 5 or 6 brothers on the street. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. They were still out trying to squeegee cars. And I saw, you know, I just saw all this deplorable stuff going on in the projects that was right across the street in the AU Center. They had the Fair Street bottom. They have now cleaned it out and renovated it, and they put women and children back in it, but it's all right as far as projects go. But at this time, there was gunshots going on every night and different things. And I just made up in my mind, look, it's not about me and my personal gains. That's personal. And how much money I make, that's personal. But I have an obligation to somehow do something to help my people. Whether it be knowledge or whether it's going to a soup line, there's no particular right answer. And we have a lot of brothers and sisters arguing about well, we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that. Anything you can do to help the liberation of black people, you need to be doing it in your grasp. And I saw this and I asked God, I said, listen, you need to give me the truth no matter how hard it hurts. You know, because there's got to be some things going on. And earlier I had seen Farrakhan and I was reading and different things like that. But you know, at first you gotta be wary of the way people do things. A lot of brothers and sisters are reading, they got the African things on, and the suits, the Kenny cloth, and all this, and they know the knowledge, but they're doing it for one reason. They're doing it as a trophy for themselves. So when they get around white people in the corporate world and go to these functions, and the white man start talking about England and France, you see, they can say, oh, I'm a pharaoh, I was once a pharaoh, and it doesn't have anything to do with the liberation of black people, and it's a thin line between that. Some people are using this for a utility for their own personal gains, be political or economical gains. And I have seen brothers that's been in the struggle with me for the last 5 years just regress totally. Because they found out that there wasn't no money in it. And they could not bridge the gap between making money in this capitalistic society, and also, they couldn't bridge that gap also with being conscious and being patient, but still study as when you go through the hills of North America each day. So they would say, hey, you know, and then they would always make excuses about it. Well, hey, you call everything black insanity. Well, I think the brothers and sisters are sitting down talking all the time are insane, you know. And I went home to a funeral. I just buried one of my aunts, great aunts, was 94, so it was kind of happy funeral and all. I said, hey, you know, she's finally leaving hell, you know, she's going where she's supposed to go. But anyway, went to bury her, and I had a cousin, she just got out of the University of South Carolina, and she's like, yeah, well, I don't really need the knowledge, it's the brothers and sisters. And I said, no, you're the main one that needs the knowledge. And she said, what do you mean by that? I said, listen, let's take Atlanta. In the AU Center, you have the Fair Street Bottom, and you have a street called Lachey Street. And right next to it, you have a dormitory that is Raleigh Hall. It's the freshman dormitory. We just have that symbolic of a college graduate, a college dormitory, the undergrad grade. And let's look at this scale. Now, if you balance that scale out, the brother in the project he's given nothing, he has nothing, he's given nothing to work for, he has a brick wall, because when you're given nothing, no role models, no education that's worth a damn, no upbringing, no whatever. And he turns out nothing, that's mathematically right. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. But we know our brothers in the projects and sisters in the projects come up out of that, spite those odds. See, that's the God in us, taking nothing and making something out of it. But what about the brother over here? You giving every doggone thing, and you can't even teach your brother over here how to make $1. You see, you can't teach him how to make $1. Only thing you have done was learn how to shield your pathology well. And this is the split between the brothers. How we all came off the plantation the same way. And then all of a sudden, a girl told me this one time, a girl, she was the SGA president over at Clark. She was like, wait a minute, hold on. We all got out of slavery a little over 100 years ago, and all of a sudden we got two different types of brand of people. Is it just the brothers and sisters that we have, we call our elite or our black bourgeoisie? They have learned how to act another way, but not necessarily. The pathology is the same. They just know how to shield it better. You understand? And so what we have to do is, we must draw this parallel and know that we all are in the same boat. And she couldn't get with, well, you're just talking. And you're going to get this once you start studying. If you haven't been studying, you're going to get this. You're just talking. Well, look, when are we going to do something about it? I said, well, look, we, in the 60s, we protest. That's called protest. I'm talking about liberation and revolution, where you change your mindset. I said in the 60s, we did everything. We sat in, we marched, we did everything. We got killed, all kind of foolishness. I said, but at the end, when the man said, well, we got to stop this, and he started handing out the government jobs and the money, we took all that, put our kids in the doggone enemy school, and started getting educated, fought it with the enemy. We made foolish decisions based upon our protest was not a cultural revolution. I said, let me get you, I still don't understand what you're talking about. I said, well, let me give you an example. I said, if you're on a 10-story building, you got a cat on a 10-story building, and you have a bird on a 10-story building, and they're both cooling together. Oh, we integrated, you know, we integrated. This is a great melting pot. And the bird sees his other bird's friends in trouble, and he flies off to help them. And the cat looks down on the ground, and he sees his cat friends in trouble, and he flies off to help them too. Drop 10 stories, kill him and the other cats he's supposed to help, because he didn't understand that he was not a bird. So the vessel in what we use is African vessel. And you can fool yourself, but you can't fool the ancestors. And I believe once the ancestors transcend into the higher beings, all knowledge is given. And all the things that we are doing, if we say we've been trying everything and we can't get out of this oppression, maybe you've been trying your thing, but your thing is not necessarily the people's thing. It's not necessarily the ancestors' thing. So we understand now that even this, some people saying this black businesses and the way we got to get out of this is capitalism. Well, that's the way to stay healthy while you're in the hills of North America. You need to eat. You understand? And nobody's going to take tutelage from a person out on the street with his ass out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the right way. This is a temporary way. I say, remember now, what we were when we fell in this situation, we weren't a capitalistic society. So when we go back to that way, we can't be what we weren't when we failed. You understand? It's got to be a code of laws that the ancestors has put down. So without further ado, I want to go into some things to let you know. What I'm going to deal with is, this religion that you're in. I'm talking all of them. We don't need to even be debating. We are the mothers and fathers of civilization. And what I'm saying is, we didn't have a religious system. It was a way of life. Religions is man-made. Our stuff came from the elemental forces of the universe and the gods and goddesses. As above, so below. And it's totally different. Now, I didn't say we didn't have fragments, but what we have is fragments, but we're missing other elements. That's what I want to go into. I owe it to myself to start my lectures off because I want to show you some things that we're missing in the religions, and one of it is the black woman is the key, both spiritual and physical. Now, I'm not just saying this to make it sound good. Somebody asked Dr. Ben about, he came about 2 years ago, about a year ago, and somebody asked him, well, how are we going to get out of this stuff? And he said, when you start treating the black woman right. And they said, okay, that sounds beautiful, it sounds good, but you didn't understand what he really meant by that. And what I want to say is, I want to give you the feminine principle of what the world is missing, and this is one of the keys that will shape our salvation, and this is one of the keys that's snuffed out. And we want to lift that veil right now. Constellation, I'll explain it when I put the other one, is a constellation in the temple of Dendera in Hemmitt, or Egypt, if you don't know what Hemmitt is, or Egypt. In this constellation is showing you that Egypt was in fact heaven on earth. And it's actually showing you they got this constellation is in the ceiling. It's now hanging in the Paris museum called the Louvre in Paris. And what this circle represents is heaven. I want you to put the other one on because I want to show you certain things. Okay, slide it over some. This circle represents heaven. I guess you better go back to the other one because, yeah, I'll put some on. And you can't see it, but I'm going to show you another picture of the great mother in a minute. In this circle is heaven, and in the center of this circle is supposed to be the creation story. And it's supposed to be the creator. And in the center is a hippopotamus god. It represents a feminine principle. Now we're talking about a spiritual element. Now we haven't gone to the physical manifestation. It's a hippopotamus god. It represents the god. It represents a pregnant woman because the hippopotamus has a big stomach and it has breast, and it goes in and out of the water. That represents the womb. They used to call that a water cow, and it represents the womb. Now, in here, she's given birth right here, and we'll explain it in a minute, to her son. Her son is called Soot. or Set. Now, Sut or Set, we say Set is one word. S-A-T, no, S-E-T, S-U-T, Sut would be the proper word. S-E-T, Set, or Seth, S-E-T-H, or Set typing. It depends on what era you're in, whether the word changed. Or later on, Satan, but we haven't gotten to that yet. We're in another era. Set is her first son, and he's given dominion over all of the heavens. You see, starting from here, this represents all of the heavens, which means all of the stars and all of the gods, the lines of divine. And even down to the gods that you worship today is in here. It's just the names are changed. You clear? So he's given dominion, or he rules the celestial pole. He's the firstborn of Apit, Tot, earth. Earth means earth. Remember Mother Earth, this whole concept? And he's the first one. And we have that in the biblical story of, you have God, and you have the first angel, Lucifer, and he's over all of heaven, and one day God is away, he's there, and all of this. This is where it comes from. Now, what happened is, and then she's given birth to different elements all over. Now, what you have is, you have these women right here. These women represents Isis, and she's holding up the pillars of heaven. So not only is showing you that, hey, the creator is feminine, it's showing you the person that holds up the pillars of heaven is also God, which is represented in the great goddess. Okay? Right. Right here, you have an ordinary woman. She's not a god, she's not a goddess. She's an ordinary woman, but she's an ordinary black woman in Hemmitt, or Egypt. So it's showing you, everything that they do is symbolic. Nothing is done without a reason. So common sense, if she's here with some significance. They don't decorate nothing. That's the Greek way, and that's our way. Symbols without substance. That's the white man's way, since we live in this planet, and this is the time we own. Everything is done for a reason. She's an ordinary woman, and an ordinary woman of that day would probably, and this concept is thousands of years old, even before the white man comes on the planet. So what it's saying is, this is the spiritual manifestation of God. This is the physical manifestation of God, because it can create the same kind of universe right out of that womb. You understand? Now, she's got her son Set, and she's giving him dominion over everything. But one day, he gets jealous because the people, the world at that time, is still worshiping her. And he wants to be worshipped too. You see, but they're still worshiping her. And later on, he gets cast out. That's the same Lucifer story, how God gets cast out of heaven. How the devil gets cast out of heaven. Later on, he gets cast out. Now, what we have here is, he later on comes in another fable, or another mythological story, the Osirian drama, as the evil brother. As the evil brother. But at first, he was the male prototype of which all the other gods fashioned themselves after, including Osiris, Horus, and all. And we must know that these are two different stories, because in one story you have Horus, which is represented right here as the elder. And in another story you have Horus, the baby. And you can't get the stories mixed up together, because we have a creation story, then we have a story, the Osirian drama, that lays down the principles of Hemmitt. You see. And then you have a rebirth of Horus, and you have Set being born again as an evil, but he's being born again. His mother is Nut and Gael, the goddess Nut and Gael, and they have the son Osiris and Isis, or Osar and Set, the African name, or Heru. Horus is Isis and Osiris' son, but they have Osar, Oset, and they have Sut, and they have Nephthys, which is a Greek name also. Nephthys is the brother and sister of Osiris and Isis. So you got 4 people. Now, Sut, or Set, is representative of a single male deity. Even though he has a sister, in some kind of way, his sister is unmanifest, so he doesn't have a spiritual half to balance him off. You understand? The spiritual half comes through the female principle. Now, get over this side. Now you have Seth. So he's, in this tale, he is an evil god, a god of destruction and a god of evil. And I want to show another picture of the great mother before I go on to show you another picture of this hippopotamus god, of how it really looks. You see, she has she's holding the arm. She has the big stomach as a pregnant woman. You understand? These horns represent Hathor, so because she's the prototype of all great mothers. And Isis is a great mother. Isis is a great mother. Hathor is a great mother. We have Segment is a great mother. And these great mothers have different principles, just as the male deities have different principles. But because Seth doesn't have, because his sister Nephthys is unmanifested, he doesn't have a sister, so he's imbalanced. He has an imbalance. He comes back later as a single male deity that represents the imbalance. Now, what happens to her? Because later on, the deities change into, not necessarily Egypt, because she was around also almost to the end. They recognized her. But what happened later on, I'm talking about the Bible, and I'm talking about the Quran, I'm talking about the Torah. All of a sudden, in Genesis, we have the feminine principle being a great deceiver. She gives, she tricks Adam, so-called, stupid story, tricks Adam into going into biting the apple and all, and she becomes a great deceiver. And as a result of them messing up and all this, they got to go and she has to bear children, And the childbirth is her punishment for doing this. And Adam's such a dumb fool, all of a sudden. But, the responsibility is off the man. You see how this thing becomes switched around all of a sudden? And anyway, this particular woman, the great mother, is seen in Revelation, between Genesis and Revelation, from Genesis to Revelation. The woman is seen not as a goddess anymore, not as a god, but as seen as a helper, a second-class citizen, a whore, and all of that. She becomes a whore. She becomes the abomination of the great mother. It's in chapter 17 of Revelation, verse 5 through 6 or 7. She becomes the great whore, the abomination. That's called a harlot. This is the prototype of the scarlet lady in red, and red represents the blood. You see. So now, let's just use common sense here. Everything that governs the universe, and even you go to the animals, everything that creates and everything that nourishes and takes care of is a feminine principle, or a feminine being. And all of a sudden, we got a literature, or scripts, or ancient documents, or new documents is in direct opposition from what it was in the beginning. And now you can understand how things happen and how we fail based upon that. I don't want to go too far in it, but I wanted to show you this, because once I get back into what I'm getting into, this is going to come up again, because this is real key. I want you to give me some other slides. Yeah, this is another different aspects of her, the great mother Apet. A-P-E-T, Apet, or Tat-Ert, great mother. This is another zodiac showing the crocodile figure was also seen as a great mother. And this is, you see the zodiac that you have today, this is certain different elements of the zodiac, and I don't have time to go into it and all, but it's showing you that the birth of the first Egyptian calendar comes from this great mother scene, and this creation scene is totally different now. It's known as the Great Bear in Greek now. That you see that you have the Greek calendar. It started by Julius Caesar and all. The first constellation that I showed you comes from this temple. And this temple is called the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, and it's called the Temple of the Virgin Birth. And that round circle that I first showed you is up in the top of this. But the beast, the white man, went in the 19th century, 1800s, and blew this down. blew it down, didn't touch it. He blew it down and took it to France, and it's in the Louvre in Paris now. Then he took another plaster cast and put up in the top of that. You can go to Paris now. I think you can see it. I'm not sure, because Charles French said he saw it last summer, 2 summers ago when he went. Dr. Charles French is over at the Morehouse Medical School. Now I'll hit on him in a few. But this is the Temple of the Virgin Mother, and this temple has certain hieroglyphics all over it. You see, you know that this was a place of God. You know that this was the personification of heaven, and it was heaven on earth, because every single thing that happened in Kemet, it was a manifestation from religion on into technology. You see, the technology was a manifestation of the religion. Here they just make things now. You see, in Kemet, they didn't make certain things because they didn't need certain things. But let's just use our brains for a minute. If the basis of everything that we do today, mathematics, astronomy, astrology, geometry, trigonometry, everything, even calculus, everything that we do that is the basis of civilization, they got from Egypt and didn't get all of it. So common sense will tell you, if we wanted all this that we have today, we could have had it. But there was a strict code of law. They did not break the codes of the Myopian law that God sent down. They didn't break those codes because they knew if they didn't follow that, one day this whole thing would fall. And in later times, that's exactly what happened, because things got unloosened after so many years. Now you must take yourself out of the chronology. This stuff is way older than what the white man wants you to think. Number one, let's just talk on this Egyptology thing. Egyptology. In this country, you have the Oriental Institute in Chicago that's started by James Henry Breasted and was financed by Rockefellers. You know, to this day, there's so many stipulations on how you have to get in there with certain courses you have to take. So most black people aren't even advanced enough to even apply. But who is? Then they have, you can't even get grants to go into Egyptology. So let's just use common sense. If they're giving us a book, the Bible, which is the #1 best-selling book of all times in this country every year, and that's plentiful. But yet, you go in a store and you can have bigger stack of books on Greece than you can Egypt. You better be looking at some stuff. Because ever since the 20th century, they put a clamp down on this Egyptology. And it's ironic that if you have more books on Greece in the store, and they say they have more books written on Kemet, the white man has been studying more books on Kemet than any other book in the world. Even more than the Bible that he gives you so much of. That runs his society. That's got something to say about it too. You living in hell and you got a book that runs hell. You must, and next, in a few weeks, I'm going to touch on that in detail. I got documented evidence, and I'm going to touch on that in detail, because it's time for black people to really know the truth. We got to know the truth no matter how hard it hurts. And don't care, you don't close your children's ears, because, hey, look, we got to know the truth, and we don't need to be teaching our kids this insanity to go into the 21st century fools. But anyway, they put a clamp down on this Egyptology. And the reason why they did that is because they knew that we could find our past, and we could find the keys to liberate ourselves in our past. And we can only do that in the greatest society, not for us, but of all times. There's nothing been greater than this. So they give you the chronology wrong. They say it starts at 3,000 years. But you know that zodiac that I showed you, even though they built this temple in the Ptolemy period, the zodiac that I showed you is over in health research, Los Angeles, or Santa Monica, California. The book company, Health Research, they say that the concept is over 90,000 years old. So now we can understand we've been run the wrong bill of goods on time. Because time is everything. And when I get further into the lecture, you'll find out that time is what we need to be looking at. So, now you know that they have the Sphinx, which is in the Giza Plateau. They said before they didn't know who built it. Now they just took, the archaeologists just carbon dated it, and they found out that it had a large amount of rainfall. And they said it would have to have had a large amount of rainfall, where rainfall in the Nile Valley was regular. And they said the last time that rainfall in the Nile Valley was that regular was what? 9,000 years ago. You see? So it is at least 9,000 years ago, and the Sphinx is high technology. There's a guy by the name of Alan H. Gardner. If you ever go to some libraries, you can get most of this stuff in libraries. Remember that name and read up on a lot of his things. He's a master in hieroglyphics. He gives you a meta-nature. He gives you the book Egyptian Grammar, which is the best book you can buy on hieroglyphics. It costs about $100 now. And he knows hieroglyphics like the back of his thumb. And he says now that he wrote over 30, 40, 50 years ago that Khufu plagiarized the Great Pyramids. You know, you have the Great Pyramids, Khufu, Menkaure, Khafre, which they call Cheops, Khufu, because the Greeks were great namers. They said they were great namers because they couldn't pronounce African words, so they just named them over. But the Khufu, which you have the Great Pyramids that you see on everything, they said that those were forgeries. They are older than that. He just came about and put his name on it. And we know this is prevalent in Kemet. They used to do stuff like that because Ramses put his name at the Grand Lodge of Luxor over the cartouche or the Shenu, which is the golden rope that bears the name. He put his name over his uncle or his cousin came to it. He just arrogant, just, you know. Well, that's cool. We in our own world.